Pilots reported a human figure flying beside their aircraft at nearly 2,000 feet, without a jet, without wings, and without anything that should keep a person in the sky. This is the true mystery of the man now known as Jetpack Guy, a figure so strange, so impossible, and so thoroughly unexplained that even the FBI admits they cannot determine if he was human, mechanical, or something else entirely. It all began on August 30th, 2020. Just after sunset, an American Airlines pilot was descending into Los Angeles International Airport when he saw something that left him speechless. He radioed the tower and said, "Tower, we just passed a guy in a jetpack." The plane was at 3,000 feet. Nothing commercial, military, or experimental could reach that altitude at the time. Before the tower could respond, a Southwest pilot confirmed the same thing. They both saw a human figure in a dark jumpsuit hovering upright, drifting past their wings with no signs of propulsion, no flames, no noise. But what shocked investigators most is what radar showed. Nothing. No drone, no aircraft, no object of any kind. As far as the system was concerned, the sky was empty. And yet 2 trained pilots saw the same thing at the same moment. When the recordings were reviewed later, the controllers quietly said the words that became infamous, "Only in LA." Experts tried to explain the sighting, but every explanation collapsed immediately. Jetpacks available in 2020 could barely reach 1,000 feet for 30 seconds. They shook violently, burned fuel fast, and left bright combustion trails. But this figure moved smoothly, calmly, without vibration or visible thrust. NASA engineers reviewed the testimony and said the movement pattern didn't match jetpacks, drones, or any known aircraft. One pilot's written report said, "It looked like he was standing on invisible ground." Most sightings end after the first incident, not this one. 60 days later, on October 14th, 2020, another crew, this time from China Airlines, reported the same figure at an impossible altitude, 6,000 feet. That meant someone had doubled their altitude in 2 months, using technology that still doesn't exist today. And this time, the figure appeared directly in an international flight path. Security teams swept the area, but once again, they found nothing. No launch point, no landing point, no drone parts, no fuel traces, nothing. If that were the end of it, this story would already be strange enough. But it became far stranger. Nearly a year after the second sighting, on July 28, 2021, another pilot saw the figure again, this time almost colliding with their aircraft. The pilot radioed in, "We just flew past the jetpack guy again." Within minutes, an LAPD helicopter was scrambled, and this time, for the first time ever, they caught footage. But what the video showed was not a jetpack, not a drone, not anything that fits into human engineering. It showed a human-shaped figure, motionless in midair, floating like a mannequin suspended by an invisible wire, except there were no wires, no balloon. And the figure appeared to adjust position deliberately, as if aware of the helicopter filming it. The object didn't tumble or sway like something being carried by the wind. It remained upright, perfectly balanced. Aviation specialists reviewed the footage and concluded that the object's stability pattern did not match any known flight system, man-made or natural. But the detail almost no one knows came from the airport itself. Sometime after the third sighting, airport security reported an encounter almost as bizarre as the sky sightings. Cameras inside a restricted maintenance hallway picked up a man walking calmly through the area wearing a black jumpsuit, aviation-style gloves, and carrying a helmet under his arm. He showed no ID. He walked through a zone that required 2 badge scans, and he moved with complete confidence like he belonged there. But when guards arrived less than a minute later, he had vanished. The hallway he entered led to a locked emergency exit door. Behind that door was nothing except a 150-foot drop above an active runway. The door had never been opened. Yet the man on camera never came back in the opposite direction. It was as if he walked into a dead end and simply disappeared. When investigators enhanced the footage, they noticed something unsettling. Before the man turned the corner, he looked directly into the camera, not with confusion or fear, but with awareness, almost like he wanted them to see him. Theories exploded online. Some claimed he was operating a humanoid drone, but aviation engineers pointed out that no drone in existence has the power, altitude capability, or flight stability of what pilots saw. Others suggested U.S. military technology, but no test program would ever risk running a classified device next to commercial aircraft. And if it were military, the FBI wouldn't respond with public uncertainty. They would deny, deflect, or classify, not look confused. Then there was the balloon theory, the idea that someone had released a mannequin attached to balloons, but the object flew against heavy winds, rose to 6,000 feet, and maneuvered with intention. Balloons spin wildly, drift unpredictably, and lose stability. This figure didn't move like something floating. It moved like something watching. One theory that investigators discussed privately is the one that stayed out of headlines. The idea that the figure in the sky and the man in the maintenance hallway might not have been different people. In fact, the FBI's internal memo mentioned a phrase quietly used by the team analyzing the sightings. They called it the observer pattern. According to leaked notes, investigators believed that whatever was in the sky wasn't interfering with aircraft. It was studying them, observing flight paths, descent angles, pilot behavior, and environmental conditions, and the pattern was consistent across every sighting. The figure appeared close enough for pilots to see but far enough to avoid contact, like someone gathering data. The memo also noted something chilling. Each appearance happened during transitional light, sunrise or sunset, when it would be hardest for pilots to determine exact shape, motion, or distance. Whoever or whatever was there understood human perception well enough to exploit it. The case officially closed without explanation. The FBI quietly stepped away. The FAA stopped giving updates, and pilots who spoke publicly were encouraged to move on. But the sightings never fully stopped. More pilots have anonymously reported the same figure floating thousands of feet up, always hovering, always observing, always gone by the time anyone gets close. And then there's the question no one can answer. If the man in the airport footage wasn't a trespasser and wasn't a stunt pilot, then why did he appear in a restricted zone wearing the exact kind of gear witnesses described in the sky? The most unsettling possibility is also the simplest. He didn't need a jetpack because he wasn't using one. The propulsion, the stability, the altitude, none match anything we can build. And the fact that he let pilots see him suggests it wasn't an accident. The deeper mystery isn't how he flew. It's why he allowed himself to be seen near one of the busiest airports in the world. Was he signaling something, testing something, or simply waiting for the right moment to appear again? Because if a human figure can float thousands of feet in the air without detection, if he can slip through a secured airport hallway and vanish, if he can show up, observe, and disappear without a trace, then you have to ask yourself one final question. If he chose to appear 3 times, he could appear again any time. Who do you think he was? Leave your comment and subscribe for more stories like this one.
The pop, the crack, the peel. These are the small, almost unconscious rituals of our modern lives. Tiny barriers between us and the things we consume. We barely even notice them. But these seals, these wrappers, these layers of plastic and foil, they aren't just for freshness. They are a fortress. And they were all built in response to a time not so long ago when that fortress didn't exist. This is the story of the case that built that fortress. It's a story of a terrifying, unsolved crime that gripped a nation. But more than that, that. It's the story of how 7 tragic deaths in Chicago forever changed the way you and I buy everything. This is the story of the Tylenol murders. To understand the shock, you have to understand the world of 1982. E.T. was in theaters, Pac-Man was in arcades, and in the American medicine cabinet, one brand ruled supreme: Tylenol. Tylenol wasn't just a painkiller, it was the painkiller. It was seen as safer than aspirin. It was the #1 over-the-counter brand, and it was made by Johnson & Johnson, one of the most trusted companies in the world. Tylenol accounted for a staggering 35% of the pain relief market. It was a billion-dollar product, and you bought it, you took it home, you twisted the cotton-plugged cap, and you took it. There was no seal, no plastic wrap, no glued box. Why would there be? We trusted the products on our shelves. That trust was the killer's greatest weapon. And the weapon they chose? Potassium cyanide. It's a poison so fast, so lethal, that a single fatal dose can be hidden inside a single pill. It works by stopping your body's cells from using oxygen. In short, you suffocate, even while you're breathing. It's a horrific, painful death that comes in minutes. And in the fall of 1982, someone had decided to turn America's most trusted medicine into a weapon. The story begins on the morning of September 29th, 1982, in Elk Grove Village, a suburb of Chicago. 12-year-old Mary Kellerman woke up with a cold and a sore throat. Her parents did what any parent would do. They gave her 1 extra-strength Tylenol capsule. At 7 a.m., she collapsed on the bathroom floor. She was pronounced dead at 9:56 a.m. Doctors, baffled, believed she had suffered a massive stroke. On the same day, in a different suburb, 27-year-old postal worker Adam Janus also felt unwell. He took a Tylenol. He collapsed and was rushed to the hospital, where he died. But the tragedy was just beginning. Distraught and confused, Adam's family gathered at his home to grieve. His younger brother, 25-year-old Stanley, and Stanley's 19-year-old wife, Teresa, began to suffer from grief-induced headaches. They went to the medicine cabinet. They found the same bottle of Tylenol Adam had used. Stanley took a capsule. He collapsed almost immediately. Teresa took one. She collapsed. Both were rushed to the hospital. Both would die within 2 days. Now, 3 dead from one family. The local authorities were completely stumped. But 2 off-duty firefighters, Arson and McNally, were listening to the dispatch calls. They made a connection. The victims in both the Kellerman and Janus cases had all taken Tylenol. One of the investigators, Philip Capitelli, had a sickening realization. He found the bottle at the Janus house. He opened it. It smelled off, like bitter almonds, the classic textbook sign of cyanide. The warning went out, but it was too late. Before the public could be fully alerted, 3 more victims would fall. Mary Reiner, 27, who had just given birth, Mary McFarland, 31, a mother of 3, and Paula Prince, a 35-year-old flight attendant. All had taken Tylenol from different bottles, bought at different stores. 7 dead from 5 different bottles. The link was undeniable. This wasn't a manufacturing defect. This wasn't one rogue bottle. This was terrorism, panic. There is no other word for it. Chicago police literally drove through neighborhoods using loudspeakers to tell people, do not, under any circumstances, take Tylenol. Hospitals were flooded with calls from people who had Tylenol in their cabinets. The mayor of Chicago appeared on television, ordering all Tylenol to be removed from shelves. The panic went national. It wasn't just Chicago. No one knew how far this went. Was it a disgruntled employee at the factory? Or was it a new, terrifying form of random murder? For Johnson & Johnson, this was the ultimate corporate nightmare. Their billion-dollar flagship product, the symbol of their company, was now a symbol of death. The company's chairman, James Burke, flew back from a business trip. The standard playbook in a crisis like this was to deny, delay, and do limited recalls. Burke did the exact opposite. He made a decision that would become the stuff of business legend. He put public safety before profit. Johnson & Johnson issued a nationwide recall of 31 million bottles of Tylenol, offering a full refund for every single one. The cost to the company was over $100 million in 1982 dollars. That's over $300 million today. They took out full-page ads, set up hotlines. They saturated the media with one message: do not take Tylenol. Wall Street thought they were insane. Pundits declared the Tylenol brand dead. While J&J managed the PR crisis, the police were in a desperate manhunt. But who were they looking for? They tested the poisoned bottles. The killer had been terrifyingly simple. They'd bought the bottles, taken them home, pulled apart the gelatin capsules, replaced some of the acetaminophen with cyanide, and then carefully put the capsules back together and returned the bottles to the shelves. They were counting on that 1980s consumer trust. Then a break, or so it seemed. A man named James Lewis sent a letter to Johnson & Johnson taking credit for the murders and demanding $1 million to stop the killing. A massive nationwide manhunt for Lewis and his wife began. They were eventually captured in New York City, but there was a problem. Lewis admitted to writing the letter. He called it a business opportunity, but he vehemently denied being the killer and the police. They couldn't place him in Chicago at the time of the murders. Lewis was convicted of extortion and sentenced to 20 years, but he was never charged with the murders. The investigation looked at hundreds of other suspects, from disgruntled employees to the Unabomber, but no one was ever charged. The Tylenol murderer or murderers had vanished. The Tylenol brand was dead, or so everyone thought. James Burke and Johnson & Johnson knew they couldn't just go back to the way things were. Trust, once shattered, couldn't be reclaimed. It had to be rebuilt, stronger than before. First, they invented something new. They knew the weakness was the capsule, so they pioneered the caplet, a solid coated tablet that was smooth like a capsule but impossible to tamper with in the same way. It was a brilliant piece of practical engineering. Second, they declared war on tampering. They didn't just add one layer of protection. They launched the triple seal package. 1. The box itself was glued shut at both ends. You'd know if it had been opened. 2. The cap was new, with a plastic shrink-wrap seal around the neck. You'd have to tear it off. 3. Under the cap, a new tough foil seal was glued to the mouth of the bottle. When Tylenol relaunched, just weeks after the crisis, they didn't hide what happened. They held a press conference. They showed the new, safer bottle. They offered massive discounts, coupons in every newspaper, essentially daring the public to trust them again, and the public did. It was one of the most successful brand comebacks in history. Within a year, Tylenol had reclaimed almost all of its lost market share, but the biggest change wasn't in the bottle, it was in the law. The government, seeing the vulnerability, acted fast. In 1983, Congress passed what became known as the Tylenol Bill, officially the Federal Anti-Tampering Act. This law did two things. It made consumer product tampering a federal felony, and it mandated, required, tamper, evident packaging for all over-the-counter drugs, and soon, for food, for cosmetics, for almost everything. This is the legacy. The Tylenol Bill is why your milk has a pull tab. It's why your soda bottle cracks when you open it. It's why your peanut butter has a foil skin. It's why we pop, crack, and peel our way through our daily lives. The Tylenol murders case is, in many ways, a story of two very different legacies. The first is the one we see every day. The legacy of safety, of corporate responsibility, of a world that is tangibly, physically safer than it was in 1982. A world where trust is no longer assumed, but is earned and verified by glue, plastic, and foil. The second legacy is darker. It's the ghost that still haunts the story. The case remains, to this day, officially unsolved. James Lewis served his time for extortion and was released. He always maintained his innocence in the murders, and police were never able to find the evidence to charge him. The FBI has reopened the case multiple times, but the trail is cold. The Tylenol murderer got away with it. The 7 victims, Mary, Adam, Stanley, Teresa, Mary, and Paula, did not die in vain. Their tragic, senseless deaths were the catalyst for a revolution. So the next time you open a bottle and you're momentarily annoyed by that tough plastic seal or that stubborn foil, take a second. Remember that it's there for a reason. It's the final, silent legacy of a crime that changed the world, a fortress of safety built on a foundation of tragedy. Thank you for watching. This is one of those cases that truly changed the fabric of our daily lives, and the killer's identity remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. And if you appreciate deep dives into stories like this, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps. We'll see you in the next one.
He thought he signed a normal work contract, but buried on page 14, in a paragraph no bigger than a parking ticket, was a single clause that would take control of his identity, his personal life, and even his future career. And the moment he tried to quit his job, HR told him something no employee ever expects to hear. Legally, you can't leave. How can a contract trap someone inside a job? And what did the company gain from controlling his online identity? Want to know the one sentence Evan's attorney used that changed everything? By the end of this story, you'll understand exactly how one hidden clause flipped his life upside down, and how he finally turned the tables. Meet Evan Miles, a quiet, hardworking video editor who'd finally landed what he believed was his dream job. A creative agency downtown, good pay, friendly team. It felt like the fresh start he desperately needed. But like most of us, Evan did what nearly everyone does on their first day at a new job. He skimmed the contract, initialed the boxes, signed at the bottom. The pages were dense legal text. Who actually reads all of that? He didn't realize that one sentence, hidden beneath corporate jargon, would soon own him. At first, the job seemed perfect. For the first few months, everything was great. Evan produced videos for big-name clients, got compliments from his manager, and even began posting behind-the-scenes clips on his personal social media. That's where things got interesting. His posts started going viral. People loved his edits. They loved his humor. His audience grew fast. 5,000, 20,000, 60,000 followers. Evan didn't think much of it. It was fun, creative, a harmless side hobby that he did on his own time. Until one morning, HR emailed him a meeting request titled, "Discussion regarding online activity." Inside the HR office were two people he'd never met, a compliance officer and a corporate attorney. Without smiling, the attorney slid a printed sheet across the table. "Evan," she said, "under Section 12B of your employment agreement, this online content belongs to the company." Evan blinked. "Sorry. What? I make those videos at home on my own time with my own equipment." The attorney tapped the paper. "You agreed that any digital content you produce, on or off the clock, becomes corporate property, and your likeness is now licensed to us for promotional use." Evan felt his stomach drop. He felt as if his life was just turned upside down. He had no memory of signing anything like that and definitely would not have signed it if he saw that. But the attorney had the contract highlighted. There it was. A clause he had never noticed. Evan did what anyone would do. He went home, packed his things, and told himself he'd find another job. But the next morning when he submitted his resignation letter through HR, they rejected it. The email reply was ice cold. "Your resignation cannot be accepted at this time. Per Section 12B, your contract includes a 1-year mandatory retention period following the creation of monetizable content." In other words, because his social media was now corporate-owned, he was required to stay another year. Evan stared at the email, heart pounding. They couldn't actually force him to stay, could they? Desperate, Evan booked a consultation with a lawyer named Alexandra Reed, a specialist in employment law. After reviewing the contract, she frowned. "This clause is unusual," she said. "Not illegal on its face, but deeply manipulative. They're counting on employees not noticing it." "So what can I do?" Evan asked. Alexandra leaned back in her chair. "You need to gather evidence. Show that the clause is intentionally deceptive, hidden, or applied unfairly. If we prove that, the whole agreement becomes unenforceable." Evan suddenly had a mission. Evan began digging. Old onboarding emails, training materials, screenshots, even conversations with coworkers. One coworker confessed, "They warned us never to post online. I thought it was just a suggestion, not a legal trap, so of course I didn't take it seriously or think it was because they owned everything I posted myself on my own time." Another admitted HR had blocked their attempt to resign too. This wasn't accidental. It was systematic. But Evan still needed more. Something that proved the company knew they were hiding this clause, or at the very least knew they were being deceptive towards their employees. That's when he found it. A PDF document used internally for recruiters. Buried near the back was a line in red text. "Do not mention Clause 12B unless asked directly." His hands shook. He finally found the evidence he needed. They'd been hiding it on purpose. Evan forwarded everything to his attorney. An hour later, Alexandra emailed him. "This is enough. We can take action." She drafted a formal complaint accusing the company of deceptive contracting practices, unlawful retention pressure, and unauthorized claim over his personal likeness. The letter was sent to HR, the legal department, and the CEO. 24 hours later, Evan received a meeting invite. In a glass-walled conference room, the CEO looked unusually nervous. HR was silent. The corporate attorney avoided eye contact. The CEO cleared his throat. "Evan, it appears there were misunderstandings in your contract. We're prepared to void Clause 12B entirely, effective immediately." Evan felt adrenaline rush through him. They were folding, but the CEO wasn't finished. In fact, we'd like to offer you a new contract, higher pay, a creative director position, a company car, and a bonus if you stay on for the next year. Evan almost laughed. After everything they'd done, they wanted him to stay and then bribe him too? He stood up slowly. "Thank you," he said. "But I think I'll take my freedom instead. And by the way, how you treated me and treated every other employee here by trying to steal our personal life too is not only very disrespectful, but criminal." He walked out. For the first time in months, he felt like himself again. Like he can finally achieve the success he's always wanted without any corporation owning him or his creativity. Want to know the one sentence Evan's attorney used that scared the CEO into removing that deceptive clause? Watch until the end. It's funny how bad news travels fast, but sometimes so does good news. Word spread quickly. Other employees came forward. Several contracts were challenged. The company quietly removed Clause 12B from all future agreements because now they were afraid of lawsuits from employees who heard what happened. Evan started something that would now change their future, and the company's future too. As for Evan, his social media exploded. Hundreds of thousands followed his story. Brands reached out. He began freelancing full-time, earning more in 1 month than he had in a full year at the agency. Ironically, the clause that once trapped him ended up launching his career. Evan's story is a reminder. Always read the fine print. Some companies don't just want your work, they want you. But here's the twist. There was one specific sentence his lawyer used, one legal trigger, that instantly destroyed the company's claim over his likeness. It's the exact sentence that forced their entire contract to collapse and shook the CEO to his core. Want to know the exact sentence Evan's attorney used to change his entire future? Subscribe, tap the bell, and then check the pinned comment for the answer.
It starts with a curiosity, a desire to see what lies beneath the surface of the earth. But for one man, that curiosity led to a scenario that nightmares are made of. He crawled into the wrong passage and found himself stuck upside down, unable to move, in one of the most unforgiving caves in America. His name was John Jones. He was a father, a husband, and a medical student with a bright future ahead of him. In 2009, during the week of Thanksgiving, he entered Nutty Putty Cave with his family, expecting a fun adventure before the holidays. He had no way of knowing that he was about to take a single wrong turn that would change everything for everyone who knew him. Thinking he had found a famous tight challenge tunnel known as the Birth Canal, he unknowingly slipped into a completely different passage, a largely unexplored section that only a few people even knew existed. He committed his body to the hole. Within seconds, gravity took over, pulling him deeper into a fissure that acted like a Chinese finger trap, locking him in place. This is not just the story of a tragedy. It is the story of a massive rescue operation that captured national attention, and it explains why, to this day, the cave remains sealed forever, holding its secret in the dark. To understand how this happened, you first have to understand the environment. Nutty Putty Cave wasn't like other caves. Most caves we think of are cold, damp, and carved out by water dripping from above over millions of years. This cave was different. It was what is known as a hypogenic cave, meaning it was built from below. It was shaped by superheated water rising through the earth, dissolving the limestone and leaving behind smooth, clay-coated passages. Because of this unique formation, the walls felt soft, warm, and exceptionally narrow. It wasn't a large cavern, it was a maze of tight, twisting tubes. Because it was warm, unlike the freezing temperatures found in most subterranean environments, it became an incredibly popular destination for beginners and Boy Scout troops. It seemed inviting, but that warmth and smoothness hid a treacherous nature. The cave had a history of close calls long before 2009. Years earlier, two young explorers had gotten stuck in nearly the same area where John would eventually find himself. In those cases, rescuers barely managed to pull them out in time. Because of those specific incidents and the increasing danger, officials actually closed the cave in 2006. They locked it behind a sturdy metal gate, exactly to prevent the kind of tragedy that was about to unfold. But memory fades, and new management systems are put in place. By 2009, the cave had reopened under new oversight, and people were allowed back in. John was not a novice. He grew up exploring caves. It was something he loved. But there is a dangerous reality about caving that often goes overlooked. Human bodies change. John was older now, stronger, and physically larger than he was in his teenage years. He didn't realize that even small changes in body size, an inch of muscle here, a slightly broader chest there, can matter underground. In a place like Nutty Putty, inches aren't just measurements, they mean everything. It was 8 p.m. when John entered the cave with a group of family and friends. The mood was light. They moved through the initial sections without trouble, reaching the first large chamber easily. But John was looking for that nostalgic thrill. He wanted more of a challenge. He separated from the pack to look for the birth canal, a famous passage for being a tight but manageable squeeze. He navigated near an area of the cave known as Ed's Push, and there, in the dim light of his headlamp, he found a hole. To his eyes, it looked just right. It was narrow, downward sloping, and looked difficult, exactly the kind of challenge he expected the birth canal to be. He made his decision. He crawled in head first, inching forward on his stomach, using his fingers and toes to propel himself into the darkness. The space was incredibly tight, only about 10 inches tall. Most people would panic in a space that small, but John kept pushing deeper, believing that like most squeeze passages, it would eventually open up into a larger room. But he was wrong. The tunnel didn't open up. Suddenly, the floor of the passage dropped. It angled steeply downward, a hidden drop-off that he couldn't see until it was too late. As he shimmied forward, gravity took hold and pulled him down into the crevice. At this point, he was committed. He did what cavers often do in tight spots. He exhaled to empty his lungs, shrinking his chest circumference just enough to fit through the narrowest point. He expected to pop out on the other side. Instead, he slid into a dead-end pocket of rock that was even tighter and angled straight down. The trap was sprung. He tried to push up, to back out the way he came, but he couldn't. The space was so restrictive that every time he inhaled, his ribcage expanded against the solid stone walls, locking him firmly in place. Friction and gravity were now conspiring against him. John was now stuck upside down, deep underground, in total darkness, with the weight of his own body pressing him further into the hole. As news of the accident spread and the rescue operation began, many people on the outside wondered the same thing. Why couldn't they simply pull him out? Why not just grab his legs and yank him free? The reason wasn't a lack of effort. It was physics. John's position was nearly vertical, with his head down and feet up. This inversion caused intense pressure to build up in his body and his brain as time went on. But the rock formation around him created an even more impossible challenge. There was a small ridge of stone, a natural lip in the cave wall that caught his hips like a hook. The geometry of the entrapment was a nightmare. If rescuers pulled straight back on his legs, his body wouldn't slide out. Instead, that lip of rock would catch his hips, and pulling harder would only cause excruciating pain and severe injury without moving him an inch. He was mechanically locked into the earth. His brother Josh was the first person to reach him after he got stuck. You can imagine the terror of that moment. Josh grabbed John's legs and pulled with everything he had. He actually managed to lift John a few inches, fighting against the friction. But humans aren't machines. The moment Josh had to let go to reposition his grip or take a breath, gravity instantly won the battle, pulling John right back down into the crevice and wedging him even tighter than before. Josh realized quickly that this was far beyond what one person or even a small group could do. He had to make the difficult choice to leave his brother alone in the dark to go get help. He crawled out to call 911. It was now 9 p.m. The rescue was just beginning, and the clock was ticking. The call went out, and emergency responders rushed to the scene. The first trained rescuer to actually reach John was Susie Motola, who arrived at the squeeze around midnight, roughly 4 hours after John first entered the tunnel. She crawled as far as she could, but the passage was so restrictive that when she looked into the hole, all she could see were John's shoes poking out of the darkness. She called out his name. From the depths of the rock, he responded. He sounded tired, understandably, but he was still hopeful. He believed help had arrived and he would be out soon. But as the rescue team assessed the situation, the reality of the difficulty set in. They were facing an almost impossible setup. The tunnel didn't just go straight down, it twisted sharply, leaving almost no room for the rescuers to work. In a normal rescue, you might have a team of 6 people lifting a litter. Here, they couldn't fit heavy equipment close to him. The passage was so narrow that they couldn't get more than one person at a time near the chute where John was trapped. It was a one-on-one battle against the mountain. They tried everything they could think of. They brought in drills to try and chip away at the rock around him, hoping to widen the opening. But the stone of Nutty Putty Cave is hard and unforgiving. It broke their tools and made agonizingly slow progress. They knew they needed mechanical advantage. They set up an elaborate system of ropes and pulleys, anchoring them to the cave walls. The plan was to create a compound pulley system that would multiply their pulling force, allowing them to lift John slowly and guide him over the rock lip that was trapping him. Hours turned into a day. The effort was exhausting and emotionally draining. But then there was a breakthrough. At one point, the pulley system worked. They managed to raise John several feet out of the hole. The relief in the cave was palpable. For the first time in nearly a day, the pressure was off his chest. He was able to speak more clearly with the rescuers. He asked for water. He talked about his wife and his young child waiting for him. It looked like the miracle was going to happen. The team felt they were on the verge of success. John, despite his agony and exhaustion, even tried to encourage the people saving him. He told them, "I'm coming out, guys." But the cave had other plans. The margin for error was non-existent, and the environment was unstable. After more than 24 hours of entrapment, the rescuers prepared for one final, decisive lift to get him fully free. They pulled with the full power of the pulley system, the ropes tightening, the anchors holding the weight of a grown man against the friction of the walls. And then, catastrophe struck. Suddenly, a large piece of the natural rock arch that was supporting the main pulley shattered. It gave way under the immense stress. The entire system collapsed in a split second. The failure was violent. A rescuer was struck by the falling equipment and metal carabiners. But the worst consequence was for John. With the tension gone, gravity instantly reclaimed him. He slipped back into the narrow pocket, sliding deeper than he had been before. The psychological blow was devastating. The team scrambled to reset, to try everything again, but the situation had deteriorated completely. The stone anchors were now proven to be unstable. The passage was deemed too dangerous to continue aggressive drilling or heavy lifting. John, who had been talking just moments before, became unresponsive shortly after the fall. A medical team crawled in as far as they physically could to check on him, but he did not answer their calls. The silence from the hole was deafening. After 28 hours of being trapped upside down, with blood pooling in his brain and his lungs struggling to inflate against the rock, the rescue attempts could no longer continue. It was determined that John Jones had passed away. The aftermath was a scene of utter devastation. The rescuers, many of whom were hardened professionals trained for decades for exactly this kind of scenario, were heartbroken. They said this was the most difficult, technically challenging operation they had ever attempted. They had been inches away from saving him, only to have the geology itself fail them. But the tragedy wasn't over. Another challenge remained: retrieving John's body. The authorities and experts gathered to discuss the options. They looked at the instability of the rock walls, the tightness of the passage, and the position of the body. It was determined that sending men back in to extract him would essentially be a suicide mission. It would put more lives at risk of getting stuck or crushed. The risk was too high. The family, in their grief, agreed with the experts' assessment. They made the heartbreaking decision to leave him where he was. A week after the incident, construction crews arrived at the cave entrance. They didn't come to explore, they came to close it for good. They sealed the entrance and poured concrete into the dangerous area where John was trapped. Nutty Putty Cave was permanently closed, becoming John's final resting place. If you found this story compelling and want to see more true stories about the power of nature and human survival, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching.
He took a miracle vitamin every morning until doctors noticed something usually seen in patients twice his age. An influencer promised superhuman energy, and at first he felt amazing. But days later, the headaches hit, then the nausea, then the chest pain that sent him rushing to the ER. Doctors saw his levels spiking out of control. His body was basically shutting down from overload. The dose on the bottle? Way higher than anything safe. Want to know which vitamin it was? Check the pinned comment.